Welcome to Hear From Where, a podcast about the journeys that shape us. I'm your host, Chef Andrew Garrett, and each week I'll sit down with incredible individuals who've carved their own paths in health, nutrition, entrepreneurship, sports, and beyond. This is where we dive deep into the stories of determination, resilience, and passion, the moments that brought them here, from where they started. Whether you're looking for inspiration, a spark to start your own journey, or just love hearing amazing stories, then you're in the right place. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's explore what it really takes to follow your dreams. Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Hear From Where with Chef Andrew Garrett. I am joined today by Ryan Wallingford of Team Ryno Personal Training here in Portland, Oregon. And I'm really excited to dive into this conversation. Ryan is one of the people that really, to me, exudes the confidence and experience as well as knowledge in training that is really good for the industry itself and helpful for those folks that work with them. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I'm stoked to kind of dive into your story.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So let's get started. Where did fitness start for you? Like, how did you get kind of pushed into this industry?
For me, I think it started pretty early in life where, basically I started off playing sports as a kid. And, from the time I started playing Little League and then, YMCA basketball, basically, going into middle school and high school and just getting real competitive with things, that's when I kind of started adding in, the fitness aspects, start lifting weights and, focusing on that side of things. And then, once I got out of high school, I signed up at a local gym and I had taken weight training all through high school. And I had a few friends that would work out with me and I was basically training them, just right after high school. And I originally was going to school for firefighting. So that's kind of what was my focus. But then I kind of came to the realization that if I stayed in Portland and was working as a firefighter, I'd be doing more paramedic calls, and that type of work than anything. And that wasn't really what I was wanting to do. So I pretty quickly after starting school, I decided I wanted to go into personal training, and that was my focus. So I was going to Portland Community College at the time, and I found out that they had a fitness technology program. So once I found out about that, I switched over to that. And then, so I went through the program. And then after a couple of years, I went and I got certified. And then, after I got my certification, I went to the office and saw that I had enough credits to get my associate's degree. And I was like, all right, let's get out of here. Let's jump into the industry. So the rest is history.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know a few people that have been through the PCC fitness program. I did a handful of courses through that program when I was at school getting my associates there as well, just as like the extracurriculars.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. So did you grow up here in the area?
I did. I'm born and raised Portland, Oregon. Grew up over on 78th off of Burnside. For the most part of my upbringing, I lived in right on the border, grew up on the border of Northeast and Southeast. And then my senior year in high school, I ended up moving over to Northeast, went to Madison High School, which is over in Northeast Portland, now McDaniel High School. And, basically bounced around, the area. Currently live in Oregon City, so I'm a little further out, but my gym is in the heart of, Southeast over on 12th and Division. And I don't plan on going anywhere. Love it. It's definitely a lot different than it was, when I was growing up, but this will always be home to me, and I couldn't imagine living anywhere else.
Yeah. Oregon's an amazing place. And I think that it's really underrated in a lot of areas, but it's really for folks that haven't been here, you need to come.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful.
I feel like we get kind of a bad rap, especially since COVID. We keep popping up on the news with, all the bad stuff, but it's like they don't ever really talk about the positives, and there's not many places, where you where you can live, where you're an hour from the mountain, you got rivers everywhere, you're an hour and a half from the beach. We've got a desert within a couple hours. It's like any kind of climate you're looking for, we're within arm's reach. So, you can't really find that too many places.
No, it's very individual. So, getting back to where fitness kind of started for you, what was it? Inside of sports, obviously, you wanted to perform better than the folks you were competing against for positions. Like, do you find that early drive really helped to push you into developing your sense of pride and enthusiasm in fitness today?
Absolutely. I was, a funny story that I have is, um, back when I was in middle school, I used to have a friend of mine, and we used to, I would meet up with her on the way to school, and she was a beast of a girl. Like, she was tomboy, like stocky, and just like her dad was a weightlifter, and she used to go in the gym and lift weights with her dad, like starting in middle school. And I remember back in middle school, everybody was arm wrestling. Everybody wanted to arm wrestle, and that's kind of how you know, saw who was the strongest, et cetera, and so forth. And I remember she beat me in arm wrestling. I think it was in sixth or seventh grade, and it crushed me. I was like, no way. Especially, it definitely hurt my ego because I had a little bit of a crush on the girl. But yeah, so she beat me in arm wrestling, and I was like, man, I'm never letting this happen again. So I started working out at home, just doing push-ups and bicep curls and bench press, just little home workouts. But like, that's kind of where it started. So for me, it started, in the that 12 to 13, 14 year range. And then from there, I just kind of kept it going through high school. Once you could start taking weight training as a sophomore, and basically I had at least one weight training class all the time from my sophomore through senior year. I think my senior year I had 2 periods of weight training, just because I had all my other requirements. So I was like, I'm just going to take a couple of weight training classes for shits and giggles. Um, but I've always had a passion for fitness. Growing up, also, like, I was a big WWE fan. So, watching those guys, and, who are basically, bodybuilders who go into acting. And no, don't get me wrong, they're incredible athletes, but, seeing those guys on TV and seeing, the way they could perform and their build, I was like, man, I want to be like those guys. So that was a big driving force too. And then, all of the, back in the 90s, all of the karate films with Jean-Claude Van Damme and Chuck Norris and stuff like that. I used to love those films. So, all these different facets of life, kind of like, they all kind of, involved fitness, in one way or another. So it's like, I just, it was just a passion. Like, I was everything I was into, it was like athletics related, bodybuilding related. So yeah, it was definitely like ingrained in me from a pretty early age.
Yeah, I think you and I are close to the same age, and we really grew up in like the heyday of this intense male physique with Rambo and
Hmm.
Schwarzenegger, and like Ronnie Coleman coming on later. So we were in those like really developmental years where these were the male figures that we were seeing, and
Hmm.
it's like that's what I want to be.
Absolutely.
What was your favorite action movie growing up?
Ah, man, that's tough. Um, I really liked Bloodsport with Jean-Claude Van Damme, the
Heck
whole
yeah.
no holds barred fighting tournament. I like that movie. There was a couple of different Chuck Norris movies I was really into. Um, the Rambo movies. There's so many to name, but yeah, I would definitely say the ones that I really, the guys I really followed would be Jean-Claude Van Damme, Chuck Norris, Sylvester Stallone. Those were the guys that I kind of, always wanted to emulate.
Yeah, I think that No Holds Barred is one of the most underrated, like, action entertainment movies of
Hmm.
that era. That just doesn't get as much replay time as like Rambo or
Hmm.
Bloodsport or Commando or any of those other big name
Right.
movies. Like No Holds Barred was legit. It was so much
Oh
fun,
yeah.
and I myself was also a big WWF fan. So like seeing Hogan and Zeus
Hmm.
in this like live action movie setting versus the arena setting was something else.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I was a huge Hulkamaniac growing up. That
oh
was
heck
that
yeah.
was my guy for the longest time. So
Heck yeah. So at what point did fitness transfer from your desire to really push yourself and grow personally and professionally? When did it really transfer to, you know what, I could help other people with, growing themselves as well? Like, what was that transformation like for you?
So like I had talked about before, after once I graduated high school and I started working out at my local neighborhood gym, and I had a few of my friends that would work out with me, and basically they would just kind of, I was kind of the ringleader, because I was the one who knew what I was doing, so I was started training them, and it was just, I wasn't acting like I was their trainer. It was just, these are my buddies. I'm going to show them the ropes. And after doing it for a while, I had a handful of guys that would work out with me, and kind of watching them grow and watching them transform, as well as myself. I kind of, yeah, these are my friends, but I was like, you know what, I really enjoy this. I really enjoy this aspect of teaching people how to do things properly, and how to take care of themselves, and how to do things for them, for their own body, and body type. And I was like, you know what, maybe I could do this professionally. I really enjoy this. So that's kind of when I decided to go into the personal training route. And yeah, it's, there was never an awkward time for me. I would say that for me, I'm somewhat of a introvert. Like, I consider myself like an extroverted introvert. And so I think the probably the hardest thing for me was just being with people one on one, and just opening up and talking to them, for a half hour, an hour at a time. And so that was probably the hardest thing to like get into for me. But I'd say that I caught on to that pretty quick. And I think, I've been in this industry for over 15 years now. I've been training full time for over 15 years. And I would definitely say it's helped change my personality. I'm way more outgoing now because of this line of work, because I'm working with people one on one all day and constantly conversing. And it's easy when it's somebody that you've been working with for years, because at that point you're more friends than clients and trainer. But when you start working with someone new, and especially if it's someone who's also a little on the introverted side, and you're trying to kind of get to know them and get them to open up to you, that's always kind of a harder part. And it's like, just feeling people's personality out, but yeah, so yeah, I would just say that's probably, you know, the biggest part of, the job is just, and I've got a buddy of mine who's currently shadowing me. He's been in the fitness industry for a little bit of time now. And, he asked if he could start shadowing me. And, I was telling him the other day, after he had followed me during a couple of personal training sessions, was, one of the biggest things about working in this industry is developing relationships with your clients. Um, and the reason being is, anybody can, there's so many trainers out there who can, like, walk you through a workout. But after a while, if you're just kind of, going into robot mode and, like, taking people through workouts and only talking to them enough to, like, tell them exactly what they're doing, it's like people are going to kind of get bored with that. But if you develop a relationship with people where they become excited to come see you, that's where you get those clients to keep coming back. They look forward to seeing you. It's not something that they dread, because there's a lot of people who, I know for me, it's like working out is my passion and it's my favorite part of the day. But some people never develop that, so it's, so instead of looking forward to go working out, having someone that they look forward to going and working with, that changes the game for them. So it's, when it comes to longevity and client retention, that's a huge key.
Yeah, I think that that's one thing that a lot of trainers kind of miss the opportunity on, is actually developing those relationships. And
Hmm.
again, for me, like, that's one thing that really drew me to you, is how, like, friendly you were. Because
Hmm.
we first met at LA Fitness over there on 82nd. It was like, you were always smiling. You always said hi. Always asked, how things are going. And it was like, those kind of relationships are things that the average trainer doesn't really dive into, and they kind of look at each person as this potential paycheck.
Hmm.
And I think that your ability to dive deeper into those relationships and create, you know, a long-standing relationship with your clients is really something that drives the difference in your style.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I always tell people, if you're getting into personal training for the money aspect of things, you're in the wrong industry. This is, can you make good money? Absolutely. But this is a passion job. Like, you have to love what you do. You have to love working with people. And, if you don't, then it's like, you should probably figure something else out. But, I love, one of my, I worked at, like you said, we met over at LA Fitness Eastport, and I was there for 14 years, and basically, that place became a huge part of my personality. Like, I couldn't go anywhere around town without people being like, Eastport Plaza, LA Fitness, what's up, man? And I loved it. I loved being kind of one of those faces that people would see, and they would think of that gym. But my thing is, I always want people to feel comfortable in the gym setting, and I always want people to feel welcome, because there's so many gyms and there's so many people in this industry who are so unwelcoming. And so, there's this whole stigma and this whole alpha dog thing in the fitness industry, where there's a lot of guys who they kind of go in there with their head down and their hood up, and they try to act like a hard ass. And it's like, I get it. Like, if you got to flip that switch to get the most out of your workouts, that's great. But it's like, I also want people to feel super comfortable. Like, I don't want people to feel intimidated. Like, if you ever need anything, if you need a spot, or if you got a question about something, I want you to know that I'm here to help you. So it's like, that's why I kind of carry myself the way that I do. And I'm so friendly with everybody, because it's like, I want people to feel welcome. I don't want people to, be scared to go to the gym and be scared to ask questions, because it's like, we're all there to work on ourselves. It's not a competition with each other. We're all just trying to be better than the person we were yesterday. So that's what it's all about to me.
I love that. It's one of the things I love most about having a gym atmosphere to work in, is being around people that are there to put in work, but
Mm-hmm.
also make eye contact and smile, or like give you a thumbs up and like, heck yeah, like
Absolutely.
good to see you back, like nice job.
Right.
That's it's one of the things that I think a lot of folks get turned away from in today's world. Is like, they're just afraid to go to the gym because they don't know what they're doing, or they don't know how to ask for help, or
Mm-hmm.
they're just, like you said, they're just trying to be better than they were yesterday.
Right.
What would be a recommendation you would make to someone who's like, I really want to make a change in my fitness, I want to join a gym and I want to start working out? Like, what would you say to that person who's a little bit shy, a little bit scared to get going in it?
I would say, just, take some tours of some gyms in your area, see which one, has the best feel for you, and then just, take that plunge. And most corporate gyms, they've got the personal training assessments where, basically they take you through a little bit of a workout, and it's a little introduction to the gym. Take advantage of that, and then if you feel like you could benefit from some personal training, which most people can, especially if they're, brand new to the whole fitness thing, take advantage of that. And if it's in your budget to work with a personal trainer, go that route. You're definitely not going to regret it. Because, basically our whole goal, as a personal trainer, I don't ever have the plan of working with someone for the rest of my life or the rest of their life, whatever it may be. Is that the case that happens? Absolutely. I've got clients that have been with me for over a decade, and I love it. Like, we're that's my family, but a lot of it, I look at personal training as basically it's education. So it's like, I'm educating you on how to do the things you need to do to take care of yourself, to make, to give you the most longevity in your life. So it's like, if you want, if that's the route you want to go, where you come get your education, work with me for a couple of months, and then, set you off on your own, that's awesome. But, some people, like I said, developing those relationships, some people just like to have someone to guide them. Every time they come in the gym, they want to have that guide, and that's totally fine too. But I think anybody can benefit from personal training, and if you have the opportunity to, or the financial situation that allows you to do that, absolutely take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent for pushing folks that ask me questions like, "Oh, like where do I get started?" I think that pushing them towards like personal training is a great way to get folks introduced because it does allow for that teaching aspect to happen. So it helps you build that little bit of confidence to go into a larger gym and work on your own versus walking into somewhere where you don't know anything. Like working with a personal trainer out the gates is a great way to get yourself familiar with lifting and exercise and how to do different things. So
Hmm.
I'm a huge pusher of go see personal trainers first. What is it today? Like what's your pet peeve with the social media influencer world? Because I like to ask this question of fitness people because I have my whole list of things that just drive me crazy. Like
Yeah.
what are some things that you see that you're like, oh my God, why are people telling someone to do this?
Um, I would say the thing that drives me the most crazy is there's a lot of things that you see on social media that a lot of these influencers push that is just kind of like it's kind of for show or it's for looks. It's not about like functionality or like really beneficial to you. It's just kind of it's like, oh, that exercise looks cool, so I'm gonna do it and tell people this is the best way to develop this, and it's like, dude, that's not the best way of doing it, but it looks cool, on video. I'm all about, sticking to the basics, like there's a reason why certain exercises have always kind of been the gold standard for building, this. And it's like, yeah, you can implement some of these fancy movements, but really let's, especially for people who are just getting into fitness. And it's like a lot of these, exercises and movements that they're trying to say, oh, this is the best way to develop your lats. It's like, these are like crazy advanced movements that it's like, no, somebody who's, in week one at the gym who's never done a lat pull down before should be doing this movement. Like they're going to tear something. It's like, get the basics down. And then later, if you want to graduate to something a little more advanced, cool. But yeah, all these influences are pushing in these like crazy workouts. And it's like, no, it's like, you need to start from square one and then move up from there. Um, but I think the thing that probably annoys me the most about the whole social media fitness thing is everybody coming in with their tripod and filming their whole workout. And it's just like, come on, man. Like you don't need to film yourself through your whole workout and every rep you do. Like it's just the fact that everybody, it seems like, I love the fact that fitness has become so mainstream and that so many people are getting into it, especially young people. But it's like the fact, so many people wanting to become influencers. It's just kind of like, come on, man, just come in and put in the work. Like later down the line, if you've been doing it for a while and you're like, hey, I want to dive into this, but it seems like so many kids who are just getting into working out right off the bat, they've got their tripod set up with their phone on, and if you walk in front of their camera, they're getting all pissed off. Joey Swole's got his whole,
I love him.
oh my God, I love Joey Swole. But it's like, you got all these people in these public gyms who are trying to film themselves, and then they show people getting pissed off when somebody, walks by or like gets in their camera view. And it's like, dude, you're in a public gym. Like if you can't expect everyone to stay out of your frame, like everybody else, everyone's paying their membership just like you are. Like what gives you, the right to just take over the whole, this whole section of the gym for your video, So yeah, I would say that's probably the thing that kind of, rubs me the wrong way. And, one of the reasons why I was so happy to get out of the, corporate gym setting, and open my own business just because, I was just kind of over that whole thing. So I definitely, going from working in a corporate gym to being in my own private studio, I would say the one thing that I do miss is the atmosphere, seeing all the people and, saying hello to everyone, but not having to deal with, seeing what machines are open and, dealing with the kids with the tripods and, people who are treating it like, the local YMCA and playing grab ass at a bench press. It's like, those are the things I don't miss. So, but
Yeah, and so speaking of jumping into your own business ownership, again, like not only are you a personal trainer, you're also an entrepreneur. And I absolutely I admire anybody who has the courage to jump off and say, you know what, I'm going to do this on my own and I'm going to create something that really fits my mold. How has the process and the journey been for you jumping into your own business, like as a business owner and operator?
It's been awesome so far. I'm absolutely loving it. Um, from an early age, basically once I got into fitness and started training, my goal, my end goal game was always to open my own gym. Um, and I was in my mind, I was kind of more set on like a little local neighborhood gym where it was open to the public. But with personal training, I was kind of, working in that type of atmosphere at a corporate gym and having to deal with peak hours and having to fight for equipment, stuff like that. It gets kind of old where you're, always having to fight with other people for equipment and whatnot. And I was like, you know what? It'll be nice to just be able to have people come in and not have to worry about what's available and what do I have access to. Um, so a couple of years ago, I was doing sheet metal fabrication 2 days a week, and I was doing personal training 4 days a week, and it was awesome. And then I ended up leaving that job after about 5 years and going back into personal training full time. Um, so from doing that, I wasn't able to get my schedule as full as I would like to while I was at LA Fitness, and I just wasn't making enough money. And at that time, I had already bought my house, so I had a mortgage payment. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to figure something out because this just isn't cutting it. So there was an opening for general manager at my club, so I ended up taking over my club as general manager. And basically, that was just kind of a way for me to, still be in the gym industry, but have a way to kind of move up the corporate ladder and make more money. But after doing it for a short period of time, I absolutely hated it. I was good at it because I'm good with sales and I love fitness. And I was the face that everybody knew. So it wasn't a fact that I just wasn't cut out to do it. I'm just not cut out to be sitting at a desk all day. That's not who I am. I don't want to sit. I don't want to be making phone calls all day. Like I like being up, moving around, working with people one on one. So I moved back into personal training, but so I knew that nothing was going to make me as happy as going back to personal training because I had while working that general manager position, I had met with the recruiter and had looked at going into sheet metal fabrication full time for another company, but basically working for a bigger outfit because the company I was working for was very small. It was just me and the owner. And I was making really good money. I was doing piecework, so I was making over $50 an hour. So it was really good money. So when I went to meet with the recruiter and looking at maybe jumping into that full time with a bigger company, they were looking to pay me half of what I was making before, and I was like, that's not going to work for me. I was like, I can make a lateral move from where I'm at, but I'm not willing to take any steps back. So once that was kind of out the window, I decided that I wanted to go. I was, kind of thought about, what could I do that's going to make, what can I do that's going to make good money, but I'm also going to enjoy, because that's always been one of the biggest things for me is I've got, I would say I've got a pretty wide skill set. I can do sales. I grew up doing manual labor. I worked in the summertime as a carpenter. I've done shipping, receiving. I've done warehouse work. So I've got a pretty wide skill set, but it's just finding something that I would enjoy doing while making good money. And I realized that nothing was going to make me as happy as personal training. And I knew that. So if that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, I have to open my own business. That's just the way it is, because the way that the pay structure is set up at any corporate gym, you just can't make that kind of money. So that's when once I left that general manager position, went back to personal training, I knew that I had to start working towards opening my own business. And originally I had a friend who was looking at opening a boxing gym, and I was going to sublet space from him and have my own section of the gym for strength training, et cetera, and so forth. And then, things didn't work out. He's a little bit younger than me, and he just, there was so much that went into opening a business, and I don't think he was quite ready for that yet. So I decided to, okay, this isn't going to work out. So, I'm going to have to figure something else out. But when I thought that I was going to go into business with him, I had ordered a bunch of equipment online, a bunch of brand new commercial grade equipment. And then I started buying a bunch of other stuff on Facebook Marketplace. So I had everything I needed for my gym at that, about a year and a half ago. And then, so once that fell through, I was like, okay, well, I've got because basically I decided that I wasn't going to go into business with him after I had already ordered this equipment. Well, they wanted a 10% restocking fee. So the equipment that I ordered, it was about $15,000. So it was basically like, okay, so if I cancel this, I'm out $1,500 for just to pay that restocking fee. So I'm like, well, I need this like if I'm going to do this, I need this equipment. So I'm like, I might as well just get it. And then I'm ready to go whenever I find a space, whether I find a partner or not. So then, so I decided to just, originally I had it, I had them shipping it to the location that we were going to have our business at. So I rerouted it to my house. So it was stored in my garage for a year and a half. So it was nice luckily I've got a 2-car garage, but it was, that took up the entirety of it. So after that, I had another buddy that, he had his own gym over in Northeast Portland, and he's a personal trainer, but he focuses on group fitness. And he's more of a boot camp style, trainer. So him and I were talking about opening a place together. But he wasn't quite ready to kind of take that step. And it also just didn't make a whole lot of sense for us because, I do the one-on-one thing and then he does a group thing. So I just don't know how well it would have worked out. So that kind of fell through. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this on my own. That way I don't have to coordinate with anybody. I don't have to worry about anybody else. I just have to depend on myself. So I started looking for space, and originally I had found one location up on 82nd over in Northeast Portland, just about a block past Madison High School where I went to school. And it was a cool space, but it was right on 82nd, and that area is not great. So I had put in I had talked with a real estate agent and put in an offer on the space. Well, the week that I had put in my offer, I looked at the ad and they had changed the listing. They were turning it into a commercial kitchen. So I was like, so they never even responded to my offer because at that point they had pretty much made the decision that they were going to put in, $20,000 worth of commercial equipment to open this commercial kitchen. And they had hiked up the listing price about $1,500 per month. And I was like, okay, well, they've decided they're going to go in a different direction. And that was kind of that was a blessing in disguise because I found another. So the location that I'm in, I had found on Craigslist, and it was listed as personal training space. So basically, he wanted the guy who owned the building. He wanted it to be a personal training studio. So I went and took a look at it, and it's in this private business plaza over on 12th and Division, awesome area. And I love the space. It's perfect for what I was looking to do. 1,150 square feet, hardwood floors, high ceilings. I'm like, this is, just one big open room pretty much other than the office. And I was like, man, this is perfect. It was a little bit more than I was looking to spend initially, but, basically what I was looking to spend initially, you're not going to find much, because I was hoping to kind of stay around $2,000 per month. And you just, it's pretty impossible to find that inner city when it comes to commercial real estate. So after looking at it the first time, I had talked to I had open communications with the property manager and the landlord, and we were talking. and I was very interested in it. And the landlord, he kept on coming back to, as long as you're not planning on playing loud music. And I was like, well, I'm gonna have music, but I'm not gonna have it's not gonna be blaring. But it's like it's more background noise than anything. Um, so he was asking about my hours of operation, and I told him I work from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. So he was saying, well, what if I said no music before 8 a.m. or after 5 p.m.? And I was just like, I don't think I can agree to that. But if we can find like a decibel, that works for those early morning times, or, if I have somebody coming in to train in the evening time, I would be happy to keep, my music at, a certain volume or below. So we went in to do a sound test. And so the space I'm in, there's a gal who has an apartment above my studio. So we came in with the stereo that I knew that I was going to be using for the space. And Jasmine, my girlfriend, she was downstairs with the stereo, and then me and the property manager went upstairs. And basically, we were just going to kind of listen from the hallway to see, how loud we can have the music before we could hear it, just so we know we're not disturbing the neighbors. So we go upstairs, and so the gal who lives above me, she rents the whole hallway. So she has her own apartment, and that's right above my studio. Then across from that, she has her laundry room, and then she also has a massage studio up there because she's a masseuse. And then she also has another studio apartment that she rents as an Airbnb. So she takes over that whole hallway. So when we go upstairs, me and Sam are walking up there, and she's coming out of her laundry room, and she starts talking to Sam, the property manager. And I'm sitting there looking at her, and I was like, wait, I know her from somewhere. And I just couldn't put my finger on it. So after they were talking for a second, there was an opening, and I said, hey, I know you from somewhere. And she looks at me, she goes, I know you too. And that's when it clicked. I was like, oh, you used to train with Philip at LA Fitness. And she's like, yeah. She's like, oh my God. So we give each other a big hug, and we're like, how have you been? Because it's probably been a decade since I had seen her last. But this is somebody that I had we were in a pretty, tight knit community at the gym, and like we'd go out, have outings at the bar and whatnot. And it was just, we were definitely, on a friendly basis. So, she's like, oh, what are you doing here? So I told her, I was like, I'm looking at, opening my own personal training studio. So I'm looking at the space right below you. She goes, oh my God, that's awesome. She's like, I actually need a personal trainer. So I'm like, perfect. If this all works out, come talk to me. So, so we go in her apartment because that's right above where my space is. And so I have Jasmine on the phone, and I'm like, okay, turn the music up. And so she turns it up, and we're sitting there listening, don't hear anything. And I'm like, okay, turn it up louder. Okay, still don't hear anything. And then I'm like, okay, like really blast it, so let's see if we can hear anything. Nothing. So it was like, cool. So, my biggest fear was, the volume of music, because that's what the landlord was really, no loud music, no loud music. So once I knew that was no longer an issue, I was like, okay, cool. Like, because the last thing I wanted to do was get into a lease, move all this equipment into a space and set everything up, and then have all these noise complaints and be like, well, this isn't going to work. I'm going to have to go somewhere else. Because I told my landlord, I said, I'm looking at long-term here, because I've got, thousands and thousands of pounds of equipment that I'm going to be setting up. So once I do that, I'm like, I'm not moving it. So like, I'm looking to stay here. So yeah. So once I figured out that was the sound was no longer an issue, I talked to a little bit more to the property manager and the landlord, and we negotiated on lease, and the rest is history. And I just definitely think that it was fate that the other place that I had looked at originally fell through, because this is definitely where I'm meant to be. The area, it's centrally located. It's less than 4 miles from the gym that I was at prior. So that, that makes an easy transition for my clients. Cause like I said, I had about 35 clients follow me from LA Fitness to where I am currently. And yeah, it's just been awesome. The area is awesome. I love the building I'm in. All of the businesses within that building are all health and wellness related. So we've got, massage therapists, acupuncturists, Chinese medicine, just regular therapists. Um, so basically, even we've got some dietitians in there as well. So everybody in there it's all about, basically working on your mental and physical health. And, my personal training studio kind of completed that by, having something that was fitness focused, because there's a Pilates studio upstairs, but, that's a little bit different, from what I do. So now it's just kind of, basically whatever you're looking for, whether you're trying to work on your mental or physical health, we cover it within that building. So it's a great community. And I'm super happy to be there. The property manager and the landlord are awesome. I've had no issues. So yeah, I definitely feel like it was fate for me to find that place and for everything to, transition so smoothly.
That is 100% fate, no doubt. And I think that some of the things you really keyed in on there is like the amount of planning that goes into a plan, and then everything gets thrown out the window and you have to start over with a new plan. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's the core of entrepreneurship, is like that drive and desire to push yourself outside of these things that, like, most people, if something goes wrong, it's like, well, I guess it's just not going to work. But
Mm-hmm.
having that drive to say, no, this is what I'm going to do, and continue to push and push and push, and then you land at this space where it's like you see this person you haven't seen in a while, and you're like, oh my god. And I can feel that as like, okay, I'm in the right place, and it kind
Mm-hmm.
of creates that calm where it's okay, this is gonna be the right move. And then you're surrounded by all these other wellness people. That's I didn't realize when I came and visited the studio that there were all those other businesses around you. That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, so you guys could really work collaboratively in a way that any other, you know, gym is just not going to have access to because of the uh, just size of it. So you guys, that's fantastic.
Absolutely. And that was kind of one of the reasons why, once I had ordered my commercial equipment, that, instead of canceling that order, I wanted, I was like, you know what, if I have it, I know that's going to push me to like really make this thing happen. Because if I cancel it, then it's, I'm basically just postponing it when I know that this is my goal, this is what I have to do. So that really kind of lit a fire under my ass to like just make it happen and, make everything go into motion. So I'm glad that I ended up doing that. But yeah, it was definitely a crazy transition. Just because I was working 6 days a week, at the gym I was at, while moving into this space. I took zero time off. It was in December, so it was over the holiday. So I was spending, I remember being in the gym setting up and working on the space on Christmas Eve, and same New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, I was in there, working on stuff. And it was probably the hardest month of my life, just, working, full time plus, because I haven't worked just regular full time in, you know, 6 7 years. So it's, working 6 days a week plus setting up a business all at the same time. And then, basically having my last day at one gym and then opening my own business that following Monday. Um, it was definitely a crazy transition, but I knew once I got in there, everything would be worth it. And that, yes, I'm running my own business now, but in comparison to, running a business at one place and setting up a business, now this is pretty smooth sailing. So yeah, no, it was definitely, it was a hard transition, just to get everything up and running and make it happen. But, I'm super happy I did. Huge thanks to my girlfriend, because she put in countless hours working on the space, painting, setting things up. She also transitioned into a new job at the same time. She started a new job the same day that I opened my business, and she had put in her 2 weeks in prior. And her being in sales, basically, she knew that, once she put in her 2 weeks, they were just going to let her go. So she had the week of Christmas and the week of New Year's off. So basically, she spent all that time working on the space. So without her, there's absolutely no way we could have made this happen. So, I can't thank her enough for that. Um, but yeah, it was definitely a ton of work, but we made it happen, and I couldn't be happier with how everything worked out. So, and being in that building, like you were talking about, yeah, I actually have picked up a couple of clients. I've got a therapist who works a couple doors down from me. She started working with me. And then my neighbor upstairs, who's an old friend, she started working with me 3 days a week. And I've had countless people come up to me and talk to me about my business and how everything works. And I've got more people who are interested. I'm still working on getting my business cards made because I wanted to get my social medias up and running. So now that I've got that all straightened out, I need to get my business cards printed, and that way I can go to all the businesses within my building, hand them some business cards, and just kind of introduce myself. Because I've met a lot of them, but I haven't met each and every one of them. So I just kind of want to make face and give them my business card and just kind of talk, because yeah, in a building like that, networking is huge. So it's like, I know that just my business is, and my schedule is so full already, but just by doing that and going out and reaching to all these other business owners that I know that can be huge for myself. So definitely need to make that happen.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. And so, I mean, I'm going to go full circle on this because, you talked about being an introvert early on and how your experience in fitness has really allowed you to be, an introverted extrovert. That that is something that a lot of folks don't recognize the opportunity for early in their careers, is what kind of personality and network they're building early on to be able to move into their own business and network and say hello and make face and have conversation. Because again, like, aside from the natural beauty of Oregon, Oregon is, like, to me, it's a very collaborative place.
Hmm.
Every restaurant I've been in, every catering event, every kind of like opportunity that I get out into Oregon, there's an opportunity to meet someone that has a really cool story, and one way or another, we wind up working together, and it's
Hmm.
just like this inherent collaborative desire that we have here, and I haven't experienced that anywhere else that I've lived,
Hmm.
and I think that's a really awesome aspect of what we have here.
Absolutely. Being born and raised here, it's funny because I've always known, Portland to be one of those places where anywhere you go, you can have conversation with people. It's a very friendly place. And from being here my whole life, I thought that that's just kind of how things were. And then you do a little bit of traveling, and you're like, nope, that's not the case at all. Even going up to places like Seattle, that's only 3 hours north of here. Um, the energy is completely different. The community is completely different, and it just has a completely different feel. And it doesn't have that, tight knit community feel that we have here. Um, but yeah, I love, the fact that it's so easy to just meet people here and create conversation and build relationships, and it sucks because we're, ever since COVID, I feel like it's kind of taken a step back from that. With everybody, with the lockdown and everything being shut down, I feel like people kind of lost that ability to go out and just meet people and converse. And a lot of people, there's a lot of people who during that lockdown, they kind of got very comfortable with just kind of staying in and they haven't really reintroduced themselves to going out and doing things. So I would say that it's not as much so in that place that it used to be, but I feel like slowly but surely we're kind of working our way back. So hopefully we'll kind of get back to where we were prior, but it's going to take time. um, and another thing is, with the advancement of social media and everybody, dating websites and whatnot, I feel like, people are more, it's more about connecting on, through their phone or, over the internet. So I'm hoping that it's not, that social, physical social interaction and communication isn't on the downfall, um, but yeah, so yeah, no, I definitely love the community that we have here and how easy it is to meet people and build relationships.
Yeah, I definitely am in the hope boat as well. As I think that we're on our way back to socially interacting, not just through the internet anymore. I feel that more in the world, as I go out. I spend a lot of time just hiking around and being outside, and
Hmm.
I'm seeing a lot more smiles and a lot more people are out and about, which is good.
Yeah.
Um, what do you, as a personal trainer, do you have a trainer? Like where do you keep your motivation to continue your effort in fitness as you're training all these other folks?
Um, I personally don't have a trainer. I had when I first started, when I first got into personal training, I had one of my coworkers at the first gym I worked at was a 24-hour fitness over at Mall 205, and there's a trainer over there that he wanted to kind of work his way up the rankings, and he wanted to be a fitness manager. So he took me under his wing and was basically like, I'm going to make this guy one of the most successful trainers to show that I can develop talent, and that they're going to look at me for management positions. um, so he kind of took me under his wing and kind of, taught me a lot. He's super knowledgeable. His name's Anthony Sambothy. He also has his own business here in Portland, Oregon. He's got a studio down in the Pearl District called Sambothy Strong. Um, the dude's awesome. He's crazy knowledgeable. He's always working on his next certification. The dude's constantly booked solid. Like, just an awesome guy, tons of knowledge. I always say, I have so much to, you know, thank him for, taking me under his wing and kind of getting the wheels turning. So I would say that he's probably the one person that I would consider, like, really help my development. But when it comes to, always staying in shape and, pushing me, I'd say that I do a pretty good of being self-motivated. I'm a little OCD. So, when it comes to nutrition or working out, like I'm a perfectionist. And, I don't ever want to be just average. I always want to be on that, that next level. So I hold myself to a pretty high standard. And another thing is, for me, being in this industry and working with people and training people on, exercise and nutrition and just overall just taking care of themselves, mental and physically, um, I wouldn't feel comfortable coaching others if I wasn't implementing things myself. So
Mm.
that has always been my biggest motivation for always being in shape, always eating good and just taking care of myself. Cause it's like, if I'm not taking care of myself and if I'm not practicing what I'm preaching, then why would you listen to me? And that's one of the things I see in this industry a lot is I see a lot of people, coaching people on things, but they don't implement themselves. And it's one of those things where it's just like, at a certain point, talk is talk. You can say what you want, but if you're not practicing it, then it's like, why is somebody going to listen to you? So I think for me that would be probably my biggest motivation for, staying in the, working out 6 days a week, eating healthy. Don't get me wrong. I give myself a couple of cheat meals here and there. But for me, I eat chicken and rice and broccoli 3 times a day. I lift weights 6 days a week, and I love it. I'm just I'm a creature of habit. I love my routine. And, yeah, and I would say the biggest reason, my biggest motivator to keep me in that mode is my clients.
That's awesome. I love to hear that, and as someone who's uh, personally witnessed you do the things that you suggest to other people, that's a huge piece of the health and nutrition world, right? It's like there's so many people that kind of talk out the side of their neck, or they don't do what they suggest other people do. And
Hmm.
I think hitting on the fact that it's okay to have a cheat meal, or it's okay to take a rest day. I
Absolutely.
think that the average social media influencer personality is like, you have to be 100% in this all the time. And I
Yeah.
think that's what creates a non-sustainable piece of the puzzle, right? It's like most folks think that if they're going to change their fitness life, they have to become this, 100% 7 days a week, counting your macros, paying attention to absolutely everything. And there's no freedom, you know,
Yeah.
uh, it's an interesting take. Like, what's your take on rest and recovery?
So you absolutely have to give your body rest. If you're in the gym 7 days a week, constantly breaking it down, you're just breaking it down, breaking it down, breaking it down, and not giving it time to recover. So that's where you're going to set yourself up for not only allowing yourself for growth, but you're also going to be dealing with injuries. You're just wearing your body down to the point where, it's just not getting the kind of recovery in order to come back stronger. So rest is definitely a key component of things. Um, Depending on how many, I say, like, for me, I'm in the gym, I'm lifting weights 6 days a week, but I'm only working each major muscle group once a week. I'm on a split to where, Mondays I'm doing chest and core, Tuesdays I'm doing quads and calves, Wednesdays I'm doing shoulders and core, Thursdays I'm doing back, Friday I'm doing glutes, hamstrings, and calves, and Saturdays I'm doing arms and abs. So it's like, yeah, I'm in the gym 6 days a week, but I'm only really focusing on one major muscle group, you know, each day. So while I'm working these other muscle groups, those other ones are resting. And then I've always given myself Sundays off. But yeah, so it's like you definitely need at least one day off a week, if not two. And then just putting enough time in between, the days that you're working certain muscle groups to um, give those muscles recovery time. Because it's like, that's what, a lot of people don't understand is like, yeah, when you're in the gym and you're working out, you're creating muscle, little tears in the muscle fibers. And in order for those muscle fibers to recover and, be fed and fill in, you're not going to see that, that progress, because you're just breaking it down and not giving it time to recover. So recovery is huge. One of the things that you were just kind of talking about that I would like to jump into is the nutrition side of things. In one of the diet that always gets, or the word that always gets thrown around is diet. And I'm not a fan of the word diet, just because, when I think of diet, I think of, a fad. What's the newest fad? Are we talking keto? Are we talking intermittent fasting? What are we talking about here? And what I always like to tell people is, you need to come up with an eating plan, a functional eating plan that's going to work for you, because when it comes to getting healthy and staying healthy, you need to find something that you're gonna be able to stick to for, hopefully the rest of your life. You don't want to do some crash diet that it's like, okay, you're going to stay on this for 4 weeks and you're going to look great for Cabo, and then you get off of it and you put all that weight back on, or whatever your goal is. It should never be, it should be something that you can stick with for a long period of time. So, especially when people are going from, eating whatever they want to, starting to change their habits, I like to implement just kind of like focusing on one thing at a time. Like, if you're drinking, a 6 pack of soda, a day, let's start off with, let's cut the soda out. Let's just focus on getting the soda out, increasing your water intake. Once we get that down, and once you're comfortable with no more soda, then we'll start looking at your food. Let's break it up into, instead of eating 2 large meals a day, let's break it up into 3 meals a day. Then let's work our way up to 5 meals, 5 small meals a day. Then later it's like, okay, now that you're on the 5 meals a day, let's clean it up a little bit. Let's get rid of these, white breads and all the sugar. Let's start focusing on cutting these out, and let's focus on, good carbohydrate sources. Let's, implement a little bit more clean protein sources, just kind of doing it one thing at a time. Because if you go from, 30 years on this planet of eating whatever the hell you want to all of a sudden you're trying to stay within these macro goals where you're eating nothing but clean foods all the time and you're drinking a gallon of water, it's not attainable. Like, you're not going to be able to stick to that. Like, I don't want to say you can't, but there's a very small percentage of people who are going to be able to flip that switch and just dive in and be successful. Because it's like, you gotta allow yourself time to adapt, and if it's too much all at once, you're just going to get burnt out. You're going to get, it's just not going to work. So, focusing on one thing at a time, and then just slowly building up to where, okay, now we're 6 months in and we've got everything where we want it. Now we can really, implement these things and we can really see the progress, so, because, if you're all it takes is, changing one habit at a time to really start seeing results. Like I was a big soda drinker when I was a teenager, and I remember I would cut out soda and I would lose like 10 pounds in 2 weeks. Like, it's crazy. Like, all it takes is like one habit change and you can really start seeing progress. So it's like, it's not like you're not going to see progress until we get everything perfect. It's like, no, these little changes are going to allow you to see progress. And that's also going to motivate you to keep dialing things in. Cause it's like, okay, I cut out soda and I lost 10 pounds. I wonder what would happen if I cut out sweets before bed. I wonder what would happen if I started drinking, a gallon of water a day, if I, started doing 5 small meals instead of 3 large meals, just little things here and there, because all it takes is one change to really see progress. So it's, focus on that, focus on one thing at a time. And then, once you get everything to where it's supposed to be, stick with it, and you're not going to burn yourself out. So that's kind of what I like to focus on when it comes to the nutrition side of things.
That is amazing advice, especially in a world where we are so like, I want results and I want them right now. And
Mhm.
I think that folks get so wrapped up in the fact that, oh my God, I went to the gym 3 times for the first time ever and I didn't lose 20 pounds. And, I don't bench 225 for reps right now. Like,
Mhm.
the amount of discipline that goes into staying consistent. And that's what I try to tell folks is like, you aren't going to change the world in 24 hours, but if you make that effort for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 months, a year, all of a sudden you start to see these changes, and it just becomes like you're saying, is like the habits, right? Is like you
Mhm.
just changing that mindset of what it is.
Absolutely. And one of the things I say all the time, I couldn't tell you how often I say this, is consistency is key. Just because you can hit the gym 5 times in a week, and eat good all week long. But all it takes is, you missing the gym for a week or two, or, coming off, getting off your diet and just kind of having a free for all nutritionally for a week to kind of kill, a month's worth of hard work. That's all it takes. So instead of just, going balls to the wall for a month and then taking a few weeks off, like, hit the gym 3 times a week, eat good. It doesn't have to be, perfect, but eat healthy and just stay consistent with that. And you'll see such better results than if you're just going super hard and then burning yourself off and then taking off a little bit of time. And then you go back and you're starting from square one. And it's a constant, process of starting over, starting over, starting over. So it's just stay consistent. Even if you're only getting in the gym once a week, that's better than none. Even if you're, only focusing on one part of nutrition, it's better than not focusing on your nutrition at all and just eating whatever the hell you want. Like, always stick with something, because it's when you fall off completely, that's when you're going to get to that point where it's like, whenever you get back into it, you're starting from scratch. That's just the way it is. So, yep, consistency is huge when it comes to, health and, taking care of yourself.
Yep. That is the key.
Mm.
Brian, thank you so much. I can't believe we've already hit an hour, and I'm like, whoa, that went by very fast. I am stoked to hear your story, to learn more about where you started and how you got to where you're going. And I'm looking forward to seeing how much more growth you experience in the years to come. Where can people find out? How can people work with you? Like, where can they find information about your business and what you're doing?
So my business is Team Ryno Personal Training LLC. You can find me on Facebook at Team Ryno Personal Training. I'm also on Instagram as Team underscore Ryno underscore personal underscore training. um, but
Sorry, I'm going to put them in the show notes as well. So,
right. Uh, so yeah, you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook. Also, I'm on Vagaro, so you can look me up as personal Team Ryno Personal Training LLC on there. Um, but yeah, or even if you guys, if you're in the neighborhood, want to drop in and see the studio, I'm on 12th and Division, Suite 106. I welcome everybody. I'm happy to work with any type of demographic. I focus on everything from injury rehabilitation to weight loss to muscle building, whatever it is that you're looking to achieve. I'm totally comfortable doing. Um, yeah, so, still got a little bit of time in the schedule. Things are getting pretty busy. I'm also looking at bringing on a buddy of mine to work in the evenings from 5 to 8 or 5 to 9. So that'll open up some more time as well. But yeah, so if you have any questions or, anything, feel free to reach out on social media, or, even just come in and, pop in and say hello. So.
Heck yeah. Right on, my dude. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story. Folks, I'll put everything in the show notes so you can easily reach out, and start working with one of the best. Again, Ryan, thank you so much for joining me, my man.
Thank you for having me, Andrew.
Heck yeah. That's it for this episode of Here From Where. Thanks for tuning in, and if you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. A huge thanks to Justin Pitaleski for the music and sound production, and until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep moving forward. All the best, and happy cooking.